Allah says in the book of the Quran that he is master of the day of judgment. Tell me something. Why should there be a judgment? Why? Is there any accessory for it? See, many of you, my dear brothers, have been before the judges. And my dear brothers, you have been before the judges. You know that these judges do not judge with justice. And that some of you have been with them long enough that you don't expect justice when you go. Isn't that right? Now, we can take our cases to court. It's natural. It's what us good citizens should do. But the judges of this world are not just judges. And since that there is no real justice in this world, this is why the world needs to be judged. And this is why there is a day of judgment and a limit set on America in this world. So now, what is the judgment? Judgment. When you get a judgment, what do that means? I know you know. If anyone knows, we knows. When you get a judgment, that means that a judge has rendered a decision. And that decision is called the judgment. The judgment is the ability to judge, to make a decision or form an opinion objectively, authoritatively, and wisely, especially in matters affecting actions, good sense, discretion, misfortune, regarding afflicted by a defined sentence is also a judgment. Also, the last judgment, the final trials of all mankind, both the living and the dead at the end of the world. So when we talk about judgment, we talking about one, God's forming a decision. And God's decision comes down against America and against this world. Well, usually there's a clerk of the courtroom. Somebody has to read the decision. Now, the judge, you know where it came from, but your eyes are fastened on the clerk. What is it? And if the decision is made against you, the question is, what kind of power do you have to overturn the decision? Now, God, listen carefully now, has sent down his decision, his attempt to wipe out America. I'm going to say it again. I said God has sent down his decision. His intention is the total destruction of America. I know you say you're American. There's nothing wrong with that. Say what you will. But the question is America good? And by what standards? And if America have extended the limit, then the question is, after God has sent down his decision, somebody has to make it known, publish the decision. There is no appeal. Don't have to waste time. But there is a way to get out from it. It's very narrow. It's very limited. But you can't avoid it. And I want to tell you somehow this afternoon. So now, what is your position, black man, in this judgment? Whether you know it or not, you are the real reason why God is judging America. Even as it was in ancient Egypt, it was the children of Israel and Pharaoh's mistreatment of them that caused God's appearance and judgment. It was the Hebrews in Babylon, their presence and their mistreatment that caused God's judgment of Babylon. It is your mistreatment at the hands of white people that caused God's judgment on America. Now you, in your silliness, are so forgiving. White folks ain't even asked for forgiveness. I want you to hear me, brothers and sisters. White folks had even acknowledged that they did you wrong. They have not repented from what they did to your fathers and what they doing to you and what they plan against your future. But God knows their thoughts and plans. And because he knew them before they came into existence, he plans the destruction right before they was born. I want you to hear me. Black people in America, whether you want to believe it or not, are very special to the Lord of creation. Not because you have been good, as you know, as you certainly have not been good. But God has chosen people in the past who was not good. But he had a purpose for them. And therefore he chose them to be his people. For his purpose, you have been chosen to be God's people. To do a very special work for God. But you are all wrapped up in the people he came to destroy. You want to integrate with your enemy. You want to marry your enemy. You are in love with your enemy. So if God send down his judgment on the enemy that you are in love with, you say, no, God, I ain't going with you if I can't bring white folks with me. Yes, this is you. Some of you will say, the hell with you, God. I know there's some good white people. And then you start making yourself busy trying to find somebody good that you can tell your God to your own God. You remind me of Abraham. When the angels came to Abraham and told Abraham that they was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham says, will you destroy the righteous with the wicked? He said, well, go see, can you find 50? You find 50, I will not spare the city. He couldn't find 50. And he said, go see, can you find 40? See, can you find 30? Then he says, go see, can you bring me one outside of Lot and his family? If you can bring me one, I spare the city. See, God delays judgment so that his people will see that the people that he has judged are not worthy of what they bought to get. Do you hear me?